Welcome back to the Boundary Corner Podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler. Buddy, Wednesday afternoon.
But for special reasons, me and you are getting ready to head on vacation in a few
days. Deuces.
So, folks,
heading out. You're heading to South Boston for a little bit.
Yes,
I'm heading to the mountains of North Carolina, Lake Lure.
Some well-deserved time off for your boys here. Kick back, relax, have a few drinks, see some family. But we were sitting here and it's like, but we need to hit one before we go. Got to hit at least one episode, right?
Yeah, got to give you guys a little taste of something before we head away. Otherwise, it'll be a month without an episode, and that's just not like us.
That ain't like us at all. Not us at all. Y'all know us. We try to pull one every couple weeks during the off season to keep you updated. And what you're looking primarily on the back half of the episode today is back in the late winter, early spring, we had three very special guests on. Evan Watkins from 247, Hokie legend Dwight Vick, and marketing connoisseur. Yeah, and I'm calling her a connoisseur because that's what she is, Christina Garnett. And me and Brian went back and listened to those, and there were some really great things coming out, especially what's happened in the transpiring months. So in just a few minutes, we're going to pull out a few clips for you guys to listen to and kind of think about, this was 5 months ago and 3 months ago, and sort of what's changed with the Hokies. But before we jump into that, the Hokie recruiting, Brian, has been on a tear the last 5 weeks.
We're getting some guys in the boat. Real quick. But the boat went from mostly empty to darn near full in a matter of 5 weeks.
Heck yeah, like 10 guys in 5 weeks, absolutely rolling. I think we are now officially up to 17 commits, which is wild. And we're not going to hit them all. No disrespect, to guys, like Bryce Dukes and Jackson LaHue, Johnny Garnett, Matt Hoffman. All those guys are good players, Daquan Wright in their own right. But if we did that, we wouldn't be able to do the other episode. And trust us, and Tucker Holloway, missed him as well, the speedster from down in North Carolina. But we wanted to hit kind of 5 guys real quick that to us have made the biggest splash. And we're going to start with the highest rated current recruit, Xavier Simmons, getting the 336 connection back going, the 6'3", 235 athlete, the 4-star top 200 player. Brian, what do you think of this guy?
So I'll say 2 things here. The big thing is, he's the first real 4-star that has been 4-star when he committed to us in a while. That's big. We'll talk about that. Second thing, where he's coming from. So we're talking 336, Greensboro, North Carolina. This is also the footprint of the apparently recruiting aficionado Mac Brown, and yet here we are going down there, grabbing a guy from Carolina, pulling the fence back down a little bit here. So I like to see that. This kid is already the size you like to see in a linebacker, 6'3", 235, good athlete, good tackler. I like this a lot, not just the fact that it's a highly rated guy in a recent rival's backyard, but also the fact that he can play some damn good football.
Absolutely. He is a top 10 player in the state of North Carolina, so that's really big. The other pieces, you look at very good commitment list, and I think having the size ready to potentially play, regardless what happens this upcoming season, this is a guy you want on your team. All right. Now, the next guy, Brian, I don't think anybody knew this guy before a few weeks ago. And I'll be the first to admit I was a little bit upset. And when they pulled the offer and I see this kid commit, and then you looked at his tape and it's like, that's different. This kid isn't some unranked, unknown guy. He just didn't get a junior day. Malcolm Jones out of Leesburg, Georgia, the safety, 6'1", 285. When Brian looked at his tape, I think you said 86, which we were like, oh, I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. 247 went a step further. Put him in an 88. So high 3-star. What are we getting from this guy, Brian? Because it seems like he was on board quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, and we're going to play a clip a little bit that Evan's going to talk about this. What's going on a lot in this cycle is that a lot of these guys are under recruited because of everything going on with COVID, not getting junior camps, not getting junior tape, or getting junior tape late, or not playing as many games as they're used to. There's a whole lot of factors at play here, so there's going to be a handful of, I mean, we can call them diamonds in the rough, but this is more of a, because of the circumstances, just flat out under recruited in the time frame where most of these guys start getting on programs' radar. But when we you talked about being a little upset when we backed off of Sherrod Koval once Clemson jumped in there, and then this guy got in the boat shortly thereafter. That, I think, that is what you saw. All right, so we backed off a guy that we could still potentially have at least made a run up until he committed, and maybe even after, for a guy that's unranked, and then all of a sudden you see his ranking pop up there, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe just not enough publications have given this guy a fair look, before, and now they finally have, since he got an offer from Tech and then got went ahead and committed. So I like him. I mean, I think he's going to be, he may not be an immediate contributor, but definitely was a good pivot if we decided we weren't going to pursue Sherrod Koval any further.
Absolutely. Still hated them pivoting off Koval, because I think having an in-state guy like that that's giving you attention, they should not have pivoted off of him. I think that was a bad move. But obviously, a month later, he commits to Clemson. He also called it his dream offer. All right, let's go to the third, down in the 7-5. Kyrie Moiston, 6'5", 220 in, out of Suffolk. It goes back to the theme that started just, 18 months ago. We're getting bigger on the line. What have you seen from this guy? Obviously, 3-star, mid-3 recruit, but somebody Evan mentioned way back in February that commits, 5 months later.
Check his offer list. He's not light on the offer list. I know a lot of those offers are coming from schools out west, but when you get a guy that's being recruited by Arizona State, you kind of take a little bit of interest and say, okay, well, they see something in him here. Let's give this a look. And really good frame, definitely goes along with what Bill has been recruiting since he's became the defensive line coach of Virginia Tech. 6'4", 220, so longer type player. He was recruited by JC and Bill. They're starting to definitely put their footprint on the type of players that we're recruiting for the defensive line, and showing more height, more size in general, but definitely more length. And I like this kid. He plays long, and he plays with good leverage.
That's awesome. You talk about his offer list. You're talking about, you mentioned Arizona State. Also, 2 that caught my eye, or 3 that caught my eye. Washington, always good defensively. Indiana, and Michigan State with Mel Tucker. So maybe it's one of those things where it was either I'm staying home or I'm going way out west, and he chose to stay home, which is a good thing. Now, Brian, the next one to me, as much as I love the Xavier, and Xavier's a crown jewel, this guy's a real crown jewel. Rashad Purnell out of Highland Springs, defensive lineman, 6'4", 260 pounds. Another guy that was mentioned, and something that's been mentioned since we started this thing, is opening up the gates to the 804 and opening up the gates to Highland Springs. And the biggie for me and you, we said it. What happened with Jabari Parker, who had 3 or 4 places he could go play and taking a preferred walk-on, was sort of the kind of a busting of the door. This is big.
Yeah, this is big. getting back in the good graces of Highland Springs, which is probably right there with like the Oscar Smiths of being the best program in the state. Being able to get Rashad Purnell to commit, that's going to be big, not only paying dividends from him as a player, but down the road as well for getting some of these other talented guys that come from that program back to Virginia Tech, especially with guys like obviously Lauren Johnson being the coach there. That's going to pay dividends for us down the road. But let's just talk about Purnell himself, which I think the reason that some of the bigger programs didn't push harder, he's kind of a tweener. Think of him kind of in the Norrell Pollard type build there. He's going to probably play a 3 technique for us. He's taller, though, so he's 6'4", 250. By the time he's getting significant snaps, he's probably going to be in that 265, 270 range. So, I mean, I like him as a 3 technique. Probably has the athleticism to slide outside if need be, but I like him as a 3 technique, and like I said, very much in the mold of a Norrell Pollard.
Awesome. Yeah, just getting back here with the 804, getting back with Highland, getting back with Lauren, it says a lot. It says that whatever has changed the philosophy of the recruiting staff, it's to us going in the right direction. And you see Rashad. Rashad doesn't seem like he is a quiet kid. He seems very charismatic. And he seems like one of these guys that will lead the way and be talking to other guys saying, you need to come. And probably the favorite thing I heard from him was, and you probably read the quote, Brian, when Virginia Tech was good, Virginia players went there. Something that White Vic mentioned. And you hear a kid like that, that's the mentality we want. Now, Brian, the next guy, holy moly. Out of nowhere, we had to see if it was true or not. So you see something pop up and you're looking all around like, is this real? Is this guy really got an offer? Xavier Chaplin from down in Beaufort, South Carolina, reported 6'6", 370, also reports 6'5", 340. Either way, he is a big offensive lineman. You looked at his tape just this morning, Brian. What are we getting out of the currently unranked Xavier?
We're getting a guy that is big and can move for his reported height and weight. He has good bend, does a good job of getting off the line. Didn't have a whole lot of snaps doing pass pro. Saw one, and it was more of like a sprint out type play. Wasn't like a traditional 5 or 7 step drop. So, not sure how he'll hold up in pass pro. Could potentially be a guard or a tackle. There's a lot of potential there for someone that big that's also that athletic. His athleticism definitely popped off of the tape, more so than probably anything else. Being able to see a guy that big with that much bend and that much quickness at the snap.
Which is scary. Now, there are the reports that Clemson and Georgia and a few other big schools are potentially looking at offering him to come camp with them. But apparently, and this is what people are saying happened, he literally got the offer, committed, and went back to work on the farm. So I don't know if glitz and glamour will be the selling point to him. So
yeah, I mean, he might like the idea of playing for storied franchises or whatever, but I don't necessarily know if that that shiny object on campus is going to be what's going to lure him.
Absolutely.
So,
hey, Xavier, if you're listening to this, Virginia Tech has a great agriculture program. Contact us. We'll put you in touch with a guy named Wilkerson, and he'll hook you up and tell you all about it. All right, Brian. The next 9 days, to me, we talked about it before. This is make or break.
Yep.
For the class. Friday, Ramon Brown out of Manchester, 4-star, top 200 guy, top 15 running back in the country, is going to announce his recruitment. Brian, who you feeling we fighting him for as we get down the stretch here?
So there was just a 4-star running back committed to Penn State, so I'm pretty sure they're kind of out of the mix. It looks like the last two to give us a run is Maryland and potentially South Carolina. I know that's gonna hurt the ears of some Hokies out there with Shane Beamer being the head coach down there, but all things seem to be pointing to him being a Hokie on Friday. So we shall see how that turns out. But I like where we're sitting with Ramon Brown. Razor Ramon.
Reza Ramon. Say hello to the bad guy. Let's go back when we were kids. All right, the other one, and this would be, you always talk about, this would probably be the crown jewel. He's a top 120 player. He's a local guy. He's got offers from all over the place. Gunnar Givens is set to commit on the 16th. I will be back from vacation. You will be still on vacation.
Yep.
And it seems like us in Penn State, right? It seems like it's a two-man fight.
It's a two-man fight, and I kind of like the home guys. I'm not going to lie. I like where we sit with Gunnar Givens. I think we can get him in, and I'm not even sure if he's going to end up being an offensive lineman for us or a defensive lineman for us. But regardless, skill-wise, athleticism, size, kind of brings all of that to the table. All the things you want from a guy that's going to play line for you. Played a lot of different spots for his high school. He's kind of blocked some. He's been tight end. I mean, he plays defensive line. So there's a lot going on with that. But just in terms of, Botetourt being Hokie land, no doubt.
Yes, sir.
Getting Gunnar in would be huge. It would definitely help backfill on the offensive line some of the holes we have. Looking forward, to next year and the year after that. So I really like that get, and it never hurts to get a high-rated 4-star guy in your boat. Definitely helps the perception, which I think is half of our recruiting problems in general, is just perception, kind of shaping how the reality goes forward.
Absolutely. And the last two recruiting classes did not help at all with that sort of perception. And in a lot of the stuff that we're going to be playing for you guys in the next little bit here, it talks about perception and things like that. So, definitely, stay listening. We got, again, stuff from Evan, Dwight Vick, and Christina Garnett.
Yeah, we're calling this our summer supercut. And we're going to lead off here with Evan. He's going to talk a little bit about what we just kind of finished up there, some of the guys that we're looking at in the 22 class and how we sit and who we need to get into the boat for this to be a successful class.
Yeah, I think Virginia Tech needs to focus completely in the state of Virginia first. There's a lot of talent in the state of Virginia right now. You can look at guys like, obviously there's Gunnar Givens out of Lord Botetourt, one of the top tackles in the country. Virginia Tech is definitely in the mix for him. You got guys like George Pettaway, Ramon Brown in the state of Virginia. I think those guys are both at least speaking with Virginia Tech and have some sort of interest in them. You look at guys like Isaiah Montgomery out of Lansdowne. He's a guy that's a moderately ranked guy, but I think he's a big time offensive tackle. Really looking at his possible projection at the next level, I think he's got a lot of talent. Bryson Jennings, dad played at Virginia Tech, played with J.C. Price. I think you don't want to overlook that connection. He's a 4-star guy out of Clover Hill. Rashad Purnell, another one of the guys from Highland Springs. Kyrie Moyston, you can get him out of Kings Fork. I think Virginia Tech can actually do really well in the state of Virginia next year. I think Virginia Tech really should take the 2021 foundation that they set in the state of Virginia and try to build upon that and really try to take advantage of an up year in talent in 2021 and try to rebuild that roster with Virginia guys. Virginia Tech has always been at their best when the roster is littered with those guys that are homegrown. So I think they should continue to try and mine this in-state talent.
All right, next, guys. Dwight Vick here is going to be talking about Virginia recruits between now and then. As of today, We have 5 Virginia recruits of the 17, and looking at Ramon Brown and Gunnar Givens potentially coming, we could have 7, and probably a few more guys that are being chased as well. But let's see what Dwight thinks about what's changed between the guys back in his day 20 years ago and now.
They know more. They're more knowledgeable, and social media has helped with them knowing more about other schools. I got my letter from Notre Dame one time, and I was a big Irish fan, and I had a Notre Dame jacket because I loved Tony Rice and the Rocket and Bettis and Betts and all those different guys they had. Todd White, you just like, man, Notre Dame, and I'm living in Hampton, Virginia. And I mean, I wore that jacket. I'm walking around Hampton and Newport News looking like a supersized wasp with a yellow on. And and I remember my dad said, "You like them, don't you?" And he was like, "You know where they're located?" And I was like, "Nah, man, but I'm going." And he was like, and I'm in 10th or 11th grade. And he pulls out, for those listening, they're going to laugh at the old school, the OGs listening, an encyclopedia. And he blows the dust off and he opens it up and he's like, "This is a map. You live here in Virginia. Notre Dame is in Indiana." And, you start back then, they do it now. You get those media guys. And the media guy, you saw how they had a lot of Dwight Vicks, a lot of Dwight Vicks, on their roster. And long story short, man, these guys now are just more knowledgeable. They're more aware. And I don't think, especially with the dip in wins with Virginia Tech, 8 wins, 6 and 7, 5 and 6. It's twofold. In the 90s, we were the best kept secret. The Tidewater area was producing tons of talent. And now you see the benefits between all the great players and the great colleges now that come down there. Virginia guys have been leaving out of state forever. Ron Springs went to Ohio State, or maybe, no, I forgot where Ron Springs is, but he's Sean Springs' dad, but he went out of state. He went to Lafayette High School. Lawrence Taylor, who went to Lafayette High School from the Tidewater area, went to UNC, obviously. And then you had Dre Bly, who went to UNC. And you had Ron McCurry, who was the only player to win National Gatorade Player of the Year in football and basketball. And he was a McDonald's All-American in basketball. And he won 3 state championships at Hampton High, 1 national championship in football, and 1 state championship in basketball. So this notion that, oh my God, Virginia players always leave. No, they've been leaving. The difference is the Virginia that we know compared to what we grew up in is no longer the best kept secret. Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, the bigwigs, they stay down there now. Penn State, they live down there. Every now and then they would pluck a player from my area now. And it's not just Tidewater. It's Loudoun County. You see a lot of those guys go to Stanford, the West Coast. Northern Virginia kids are going out of state. And the other thing is there's some other layers to it. The state of Virginia has improved dramatically. You look what LJ's doing, Lauren Johnson at Highland Springs, Verona. The Richmond area was always known for basketball. But that's not the case anymore. The suburbs of Richmond, the Chesterfields, the surrounding areas have improved dramatically. Northern Virginia, Westfield won the stakes 3 years in a row. It used to be the Tidewater and Richmond show in football and basketball. That has changed as well. All that combines with, unfortunately, Virginia Tech and UVA picked their worst times to fall off.
Yep.
They did, especially UVA.
Yeah.
I mean, UVA's been rebuilding for years. And for years, Tech benefited. Tech benefited for years because you look at that 2005 team, I believe their entire defense starters that were ranked number 1 in the nation, or maybe that was 07, 08, but pretty much most of their stars were from the Commonwealth. In 2005 and 06, 07, 08, Virginia Tech was signing and getting commitments from some of the best players in the state. And then when you have the Allen Iversons, the Plaxico Burrises, the Ronald Currys, the Tyrod Taylors, and all these guys, Mike Vick, they start to emerge and become household names. All of a sudden, it's a perfect storm. And what makes things bad if you're a Virginia Tech fan is as the transition took place from Beamer to Fuente, people pick on Fuente that, the cynics and critics, but at the end of the day, the last 3 or 4 years of Beamer's tenure weren't the best. You had a lot of 6-6 seasons. You had that 1 8-5 season where they got blasted in the Sun Bowl against UCLA.
Yep.
And it's just not a good look. It's the worst time. Consider this. During that time frame before Fuente took over, you had a lot of guys that would have kept Tech afloat in that national brand piece if they had chose Tech. But Tech kept finishing second. You had the Devin Forbes and the Ricky Slade Juniors, but you also had Deshaun Hand, Derek Nottie, Jalen Holmes, and all those guys pick another school, and Tech was always second. Even your boy that went to Florida State, the tall defensive end, I forget his name escapes me, that went to Florida State. Yeah. Those
Josh and his parents, and they've said worst mistake of his life was going down there.
Oh, I'm sure because they told him he was going to wear number 2, and I'm like, yo, ain't nobody wearing Dion's number. What they say?
Come on.
And Pet Detective Ray ain't coming home. You're not wearing number 2.
No, sir.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, at the end of the day, but I give Florida State and Ohio State and Alabama and all the schools credit. Deshaun Hand, I was with him. People don't realize this. His first unofficial visit to any university, he followed my wife and I down with his high school coach to Virginia Tech. I introduced him to Cam Chancellor and Tyrod Taylor. I interviewed him on Cal Bailey's radio show at the spring game. The same day Chuck Clark committed. Tim Settle was at my football camp. I used to do football camps. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a lot of high school stuff. Jalen Holmes, there's a picture on the internet with me, him, and Mike. He was at my symposium I did. All those guys I mentioned were at my football camps. The only one we got was Tim Settle. And look what Tim Settle's doing for the Virginia Tech brand, and also look what he's doing for the Washington football team.
All right, so now that Dwight Vick has covered kind of the perception of recruits of the program, we're going to let Evan Watkins go into a little bit more about some of the support staff build out that Virginia Tech is looking to do and some of the new recruiting promotions that have happened within the on-field coaching staff.
That's why we have seen support staffs grow year in and year out. They're growing exponentially at every school. Even your schools like Old Dominion have them. Even your FCS schools, James Madison, is building out recruiting departments. Mm-hmm. Everyone needs recruiting departments. Virginia Tech has a recruiting department. Now they need to beef it up. They need to pour some money into it, take a lot of this pressure off of the 10 assistants and Justin Fuente, and hit the ground, hit the pavement hard, hit the pavement fast, and see, kind of see what shakes out when you cast that really wide net. Then you filter it out to your core board of recruits you want, and let the coaches go out and try to feast.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up TAP, because that's what we had talked about, the same thing, and really kind of reiterated what you said, is that it's a guy going to a similar type role with an NFL organization, wants to win a title, and he doesn't have to recruit. I mean, that's a big part of what he's been doing day to day in the last year plus. That now it's not even on his plate anymore. So, and let me go ahead and piggyback off that. So with Daryl Tapp leaving, we got J.C. Price now coming in, and on top of replacing him as the co-defensive line coach, he's also taking on the defensive recruiting coordinator position, with Adam Lechtenberg taking over that as on the offensive side, getting a promotion there. What do you think are some advantages on the recruiting trail with this type of role for these two coaches relative to what the Hokies are trying to do with building that recruiting department up as well?
So typically, pre-COVID, you would have your recruiting coordinators, your on the field coaches. One or two would be designated as your recruiting coordinator, and that helps them on the road. It doesn't necessarily help them when they're back in the offices in the war room building out the board and doing all of that. That helps them on the road, coordinating a lot of the stuff. But When you talk about like a recruiting director, recruiting coordinator, essentially right now under COVID rules, they're kind of the same thing because support staff is allowed to contact recruits, over the phone, on social media, things like that. And coaches aren't allowed to go out on the road. So there's not really that big of a difference. And to me, nothing really is going to change. Adam Lechtenberg behind the scenes has been a phenomenal hire, in my opinion, when it comes to recruiting. He's a guy that's got a lot of contacts, and he's a guy that is a tireless worker. I mean, whenever I talk to, some contacts of mine, or I talk to high school coaches, or I even talk to, some of the contacts I have at the JUCO level, they all talk about how Lechtenberg is a guy. He may not win every recruit, but he is not going to be outworked. So, and I want to make sure that people understand that that's not me saying he's going to go out and land every person on his board.
Yeah.
That's me saying he is going to work as hard as humanly possible to give Virginia Tech the best chance to land that person. Now, there might be somebody out there that can offer more. There might be schools that can offer national championship, possibilities, road to the NFL, things like that Virginia Tech does, may not be able to offer at that position. But he's a tireless worker. So, when you're back in Blacksburg and they're back in the war room and they're going over the board, nothing really changes for Adam Lechtenberg. This is the role he already had. He was already doing it. He just didn't have the title of it.
Okay.
The title was kind of a pat on the back. Thanks for all the recruiting help that you do. Thanks for everything that you've done under Justin Fuente. Resume builder. Here's your title. JC Price, kind of the same thing. I've met JC Price a few times when he would come to Virginia Tech for summer camps. When they would always invite Marshall to come in and evaluate some kids as well. He was always there. Really, really an energetic guy. My big question when they were replacing Tapp was, I think JC Price is a great fit. I think he's 100% the right guy to step into that role. But would he want to split duties? I thought that was going to be a hang up. Not everyone wants to share duties. When you get that job, at the school you went to, and you want to kind of be the guy, you want to be the guy. You don't really want to split that role amongst somebody else. So I think this was a great way for Virginia Tech to entice him and say, hey, you might be the assistant D-line coach, but we want you to oversee all of our defensive recruiting. And unofficially, what I had heard was this was kind of what Justin Hamilton was doing. He didn't have the title of it, but Justin Hamilton had a major say in all of the defensive recruiting. Makes sense. The D coordinator should sign off. What this does is take a little bit off of his plate and allow him to spend a little bit more time on focusing on being the defensive coordinator. So, when it comes to, breaking it down to like the brass tacks of it, is there going to be a major return on investment by labeling these two guys recruiting coordinators, offensive and defensive? Not that we will see immediately. What I do think it does is furthers that foundation that I talked about earlier, that, I think, let's say that the recruiting department does start to split a little bit into JUCO and high school and transfer portal and all of that. Now you can take that information and you can filter that into two recruiting coordinators who can then look at it, yes, no, and then, kind of send out the hounds to do the recruiting and oversee it. And then when you think, you go in that war room and you say, hey, we need, X number of wide receivers, X numbers of running backs, things like that. You now will have a little bit more buy-in with the 10 assistants. Now, obviously, the recruiting staff will heavily be involved there as well. But I think we're just looking at the foundation. And I've mentioned this before. I tell people all the time, don't get bogged down with titles in college football, because most of the time they're meaningless. And I don't want that to not to belittle any of the coaches or take anything away from them.
Sure.
But associate head coach, assistant head coach. I mean, you have a head coach. If he goes down, you have your number 2. Okay? Like we don't need 3 guys with this name. We don't need all of these different, ins and outs and nuances of these names that may or may not coordinate with what you actually do as your job, which can then only make it murkier when you go to hire somebody. You go out to hire a director of recruiting, to replace John Yetzi. But when you look at the actual job duties of maybe what Mark Diethorn does, that might be more in line with the director of recruiting, where then you might be looking at a director of player personnel to hire, but then you have to do another title switch. It just gets kind of convoluted and it gets kind of confusing. So I never try to get bogged down into the titles because I think a lot of those are just resume builders and, reasons to give people additional income, to give them an additional raise or a benefit. So I try not to get bogged down on that stuff, but I do think what we are seeing right now is the early foundation. It might take years, honestly, with COVID and everything and financial issues, but I think we're seeing the foundation being laid for Virginia Tech splitting out their recruiting duties, and I don't think it can hurt. I think it can only help from here.
And after a lot of great points there from Evan talking about the support staff and the recruiting stuff, take a look at the second part. We talk about perception. Christina Garnett gets into the branding of Virginia Tech, and it's a really interesting take here. And she's someone that's offered multiple times reaching out to the program, but obviously, if you kind of take a look what's happened, she recorded us back in April. Things have changed in the last 3 months. Like maybe they've been listening to some of the stuff she advised.
The other thing is that I find that if you look on social and you look at the hashtags and where the hashtags are being used, the hashtags actually have the best response when it's done by the recruits and when it's done by the commitments. So when they're announcing and they're aligning themselves with this, so it becomes a part of the recruitment story, less so than like the current story of the team. If you look at them like for engagement wise, it makes more sense because that's how the recruits are identifying themselves. Yep. And there's so many questions like, oh, you're committing to Virginia Tech, cool, but what's a Hokie? Being able to have a rally cry, a hashtag that associates with this is kind of who I am. And the hard hat mentality feels very much in line of what would be our version of lunch pail? What would be this version? And so I understand where that comes from. The hard, smart, tough I don't like just because UVA did the same thing if like the next season and we made fun of it and it was 3 words and I was like, how are those 3 words that are worse than our 3 words? Like it's still a gimmick. It's still a Hallmark football card. Like it doesn't. And so I think the reason why the lunch pail and Beamer ball and Terradome matter is that there are actions that back up those words. There are receipts.
Yep.
So using hashtags for hard hat mentality and grit and hard, smart, tough, that doesn't really carry anything until there's something that accompanies it. Like if you say Terradome, you don't hear Terradome, you actually feel like what that's like. It's in your mind. Like it comes with weight. Like it carries stuff with it. And that's the point of branding. If some of the best brands, it's not the word. It's what comes with the word. It's what weight carries that. Think about movies or your favorite song or your favorite concert or your favorite, like if I say McDonald's right now, you're probably going to think about what you're going to order. What's your go-to order? Or you might smell the fries. But you have something that comes along with the word. It might even just be the jingle. But the word on its own doesn't exist by itself. It carries weight with it. So the thing is that for branding, they need to continue these until they are able to create weight with it. Or they need to embrace what they let go, which was like when you think of the lunch pail, I think of all the times they carried it. I think of watching them putting like the grass and the soil. Like it's not just lunch pail to me. It's like I think of Beamer ball. There are specific plays that come into your head. It's not the word. Like that's the thing about branding is people want to put like a word and be like, this sounds fancy. Like that's not the point. It needs to evoke an emotional response because that's what creates connection.
To you, my darling.
No, to you.
The Roses were living the dream.
More champagne for me, please.
Until it all came crashing down.
He got fired. Fired?
From the director of Meet the Parents.
You're a failure. Women don't like that.
If you need a shoulder or an inner thigh to lean on.
On August 29th.
I just want the house.
We want everything.
Wow.
Stop.
You stop!
And see The Roses.
These people.
The Roses. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent. In theaters everywhere, August 29th.
And now that Christina's talked a little bit about how our branding is perceived by folks being recruited and by fans, let's let Dwight Vick talk a little bit more about the perception that this coaching staff has amongst the fan base, amongst recruits, and how that plays a role in the perception of the program as a whole.
Absolutely. Listen, even if I wasn't tight with Lauren Johnson, he's the best high school coach in the state of Virginia. Okay?
Yep.
The best high school in the country.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, like, this guy, Lauren, you get a couple of Highland Spring guys because here's the funny thing about the perception. Again, two guys I know, Lauren Johnson, his players, Greg Dortch and Kevon Wallace wanted to be Hokies. And look what they did on the collegiate level. Just look. I remember knowing when Kevon got the call from Clemson, he was like, "No, he wanted to go. I'm all about Tech. Trust me. I know this for to be." Lauren Johnson and I are tight. He dated my sister. Only football player of my teammate I let date my sister. So that's how tight we are. Lauren and I. He's married now to another girl named Kim, and they had a beautiful family, including a son who Tech offered.
Yes,
but
he first off.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you got to do that. Like Tech. You got to get those guys that want to be Hokies, that may be the high 3 stars, and get them in the building. And eventually you create momentum. And those pipelines you saw in the late 90s and early 2000s, those pipelines from Western Branch, from Deep Creek, from Phoebus, from Hampton, from Bethel, from Western Branch, you know, remember the Highland Springs, the Hopkins brothers, Macho, because they saw their older seniors and juniors going there, and they say, wow, they're playing, they're happy. I'm going to go there too. And then what happens is you're winning. Tech's already going to kill it when it comes to food, lodging, presentation, because it's a beautiful campus. That sells itself.
Yep.
You throw in the crowd, Hokie Nation, the love they show. Now you got a formula for success. And I think that's the relationships right now. And I think to be fair to Fuente and his staff, the dead period, COVID, Tap, who had a plan, who I know he did. I've talked to Tap. That's my guy. I think there were going to be some great things done, but the dead period has killed not just Tech, but a lot of colleges that need to get guys on campus versus a program like Clemson and Ohio State that can sell itself.
Yeah.
But I think you get those guys in, a walk-on, you get these guys, or even a commit or a guy like Jordan Williams, you get those guys and playing well, and they keep advocating, because when they go home for Thanksgiving and Christmas break, and they go back home, they're going to recruit and sell the program for you, because when they're walking around the mall or they're at the basketball court in the weight room, and you're like, oh, that's Jordan Williams, and he's got the Tech tank top and shorts on, he's lifting, he's like, yo, that dude's a beast. That's what happens. When I used to go back home, and me and Mike, we would go back home. We'd be at the old Coliseum Mall or Newmarket Mall, or you in the barbershop, and you walk in with your Virginia Tech bowl game sweatsuit on, your fitted cocked to the side, your bowl ring gleaming, and your bag. You're like, yo, y'all get like that? Yo, and all of a sudden people are like, man, it is euphoric for the fans and the kids who are up next. That's how you create the connection, the dynasty, that whole, I want to be a part of it. It can't just be a coach. It's got to be your perception, your players who are currently there who are like, yo, like look at Oscar Smith, another pipeline. J.C. Coleman, he was on my show, and he talked about how he would come back. And he got a lot of guys there to come to Tech from Oscar Smith.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and you talked about COVID, and I feel like for a school like Virginia Tech, for a team like Virginia Tech that's really trying to recapture some of that momentum on the recruiting trail, COVID just was like the worst possible time because, like you said, getting kids on campus is part of the battle, and being able to put TAP's plan in place for getting back in the high schools the way it was done before. All of that was something that could have helped with that perception and with that momentum going into 21, and now we've got a dead period that's now extended through the end of May. So
yeah, I don't even understand that, man. I don't. That dead period thing is good. I mean, I don't know. It's weird. I do think though, if we can hopefully have the spring game, I don't even know if that's going to happen, or some type of showcase or something where Tech can get in front of some of the kids, or vice versa. I think you're going to get some more kids. I just love the changes they've been doing in the off season. I don't really get hype about a lot of stuff in the off season because you never know. I mean, you never know with attrition, DUIs, ineligibility, academics. You just never know. I mean, that's what makes it beautiful. The unknown, the unexpected. That's also sometimes what makes it painful and detrimental because the unknown. We don't know what we can build on, which is why Vegas has so much money. But at the end of the day, I do like the hire, like the people who are in Blacksburg right now, because I think, when that dead period ends, they know, from what I know and talking to people, Pearson Prelow's on that staff. We played together 4 years at Tech. That's my brother. Justin Hamilton's my guy. I know they want to win, and they get it, and they were there. They know what it takes. But they're handcuffed right now to some degree with COVID. It's a tough situation. And make no mistake about it. I lost some close people to COVID, and I'm sure you guys know some stories as well, and may have lost a few. It is serious. I'm not going to get political. I don't know. It's real. You can feel like it's whatever hoax. I know it's real, and small businesses and a lot of people have been affected. And I'm just praying that eventually gets contained and we get back to some normalcy. Because for me, just football and sports, especially Virginia Tech, spring game, all that stuff is therapeutic for me and so many other people. And hopefully, we can get over this hump and get back to, getting guys in that stadium and seeing that place rocking again.
Yeah,
absolutely,
100%. We got to attend our first spring game the first year of Justin Fuente's tenure, and it was great. Me and this guy, we drove back down, hit all the spots. I'm going to say a couple things before I jump to my next question. You mentioned Jordan Williams. A lot of people get on Fuente like he doesn't have personality, yada, yada, whatever. Jordan Williams said something when he came back. He said Tech was the runner-up, but he's like, the relationship I forged with Coach Fuente it held a lot to me. And it was almost like a way he said, and when I saw the opportunity, Clemson's bringing people in and I'm seeing less opportunity, I still have the relationship with the head coach. So as you said before, it matters, and the perception our head coach is getting, maybe it shouldn't be that way because of those words from Jordan Williams. But you mentioned Tap. Now, he's gone to the NFL with my 49ers. Godspeed him. But, man, let me tell you something. They brought in your teammate, somebody you have interviewed on Victory Life, J.C. Price.
Yes, sir.
How do you feel about him coming in? And, I'm assuming he's going to probably pick up the reins of a lot of what Darryl was going to do.
J.C. Price is a man's man. He's your defensive lineman. I can tell you right now, J.C. Price is a guy you want to play for. And, they upgraded because Tap was energetic, knowledgeable, insightful, and you see the 49ers grabbed him, so he knows what he's doing. But to be fair, he actually probably is in that same position and probably more knowledgeable and experienced because he's been coaching longer. He was on the staff, and he led the way when JMU gave Tech one of the biggest upsets in college football history. The year Tech won the ACC in 2010, led by Tyrod and Ryan Williams. So at the end of the day, the guy knows Tech, and he can coach. And, recruiting, you listen. You people say, oh, he was at a made Marshall. Look, you don't make Marshall and JMU relevant by not knowing the landscape of the state and getting players that wanted and some should have gone to Tech. Okay, you got to do your homework when you talk about these guys on Twitter. J.C. Price was definitely a great hire. When it comes down to it, man, Fuente. We all been critical, man, because it's tough following a legend. And he, the timeout this past year against Liberty, oh my gosh, I felt for him. I was pissed, but I felt for him. I made mistakes.
Yeah,
Coach, I made mistakes as a player. I mean, how many times, has a lineman felt bad when he got called for holding that negated a winning touchdown? I mean, or a field goal. Shane Graham talked about that on my show. He missed a field goal that would have won us, beat us in Miami. Beat Miami in Miami. We ended up winning in overtime, but he felt awful that whole week. At the end of the day, man, listen, it happens. I think the whole personality thing is tough because Fuente, when he doesn't come across well on TV the same way Dabo does. Dabo, to sometimes can be corny, if you ask me. He is, dancing up. But his players love him and they'll go to bat for him and they fight for him, and he's able to convince guys that shouldn't come back to come back and pursue a national championship. And Fuente has just got to be him. And to be fair, the Beamer you guys saw late in his career when he was turning his hat and dabbing and dancing in the locker room in UVA, that Beamer didn't exist when I was at Tech.
People remember
Beamer.
I remember in my 19 and 20s, and they'd show Frank after a bad call, and he looked like he would kill somebody on the sidelines.
Man,
he was so mad.
The Beamer that J.C. Coleman and Brandon Flowers and Chris Ellis got was not the Beamer. We were there when he was building, when he was on the hot seat, when he couldn't afford a loss. You got to understand something. That's what I'm saying. Look at Fuente now, and if he stays and keeps winning, he'll be a lot different then. You got to be careful when you compare because Beamer doesn't come across as, man, this guy is killing the room. That's not Beamer, but at the same time, you see him now with his little dog, Frank, Hank, whatever, and he's walking around, he's cracking jokes, and he's always been a funny guy that would roast you on the low, and he's always been, highly respected and just someone you want to be around, and he's always been funny, but, early in his career, which I was there for, it wasn't fun in games. After big wins, he might be like, let's go, and throw the fist in the air and hug guys or whatever. I remember we beat Miami for the fourth year in a row in the old Orange Bowl before it became Pro Player Stadium or whatever it's called now. I don't know. They name them Pizza Hut or us. I don't know what it's called. But, when we beat them back then, I remember being in the locker room and I was elated and I hugged him. And I was just like, Coach, we won. He was like, hey, great win. I was like, okay. Like he was different. You get older, become a granddad, and Shane's now a man and doing his. You're looser. Your job's secure. You can let your guard down a bit. He wasn't doing the nay and all that, the Millie Wop and all that stuff. We were there. So, in fairness to Fuente, he's not going to be doing all that right now. He's not going to come on TV and crack jokes because, in fairness to him, everything now on Twitter and social media is used against him. Even if he slips up, whether it's a timeout or he missays someone's name or, he's guarded about who he's going to start, it's just going to be everything's, we're on edge because Hokie Nation, if there's a fan base that deserves a national championship and deserves answers and deserves wins, it's Hokie Nation. I mean, you look at the Red Sox before they got over the hump, the Cubs, the Cavaliers in basketball. Virginia Tech has suffered decades of we almost had them, like the dollar in that insurance commercial. We have almost had it so many times. The Matt Ryan, go back to my years, the Temple game on the goal line. We're ranked 14th. We win that game. We jump in the top 8. The loss against Kansas, in the Orange Bowl when Brandon Orr set out the first half because of team violation rules. Tech has been on the doorstep for years. And now with the offensive talent and the offensive scheme, whether we want to admit it or not, we made it up in our mind that we're going to be in this national championship, especially when we come out the gate in 2016 and take Clemson to the verge. And if we get down there, Fuente said after the game he was going to go for 2, and you got Bucky and Isaiah Ford. And you're like, man, Clemson is Clemson, and we won the Coastal in his first year. And we did it to ourselves with the expectations. So now, I don't think Jordan Williams is lying. Ashby. I don't think Ashby's lying. Rashard Ashby. I don't think Pablo's lying. I don't think Sam Rogers is lying. That's their coach. I think he's just guarded. I think he's just going to, be who he is. And I don't really care if he, didn't speak and just talked in sign language. I just need wins.
You got to love Dwight and all his takes. And obviously, one of our coaches just a few days ago got on Twitter and things happened. If you were there, you were there. But let's listen to Christina again talking about more how we are perceived on Twitter. And again, it's one of those things that in the last few months, things have changed. You're seeing different. We're not seeing the time tweets anymore. So again, maybe they've been listening.
Let me ask this about Twitter.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. Give me a number grade that you would give the Virginia Tech football Twitter account. Number grade, not letter, number.
Number grade.
1 to 100.
It's an 80. It's an 80. They're doing okay. I'm glad that they're. It's their Twitter wears a tie. Does that make sense? It's too curated. The copy's too clean. The scheduling's too specific. Even if it's a brand, it needs to feel like there's a fan at the thing. Okay, so I'll go back to McDonald's because I know someone on their social media team and I love what they're doing. Some of the best stuff that McDonald's has been doing is they're being incredibly vulnerable and real and talking about the customer experience. Like one of the tweets that they did that I absolutely loved was, "It's never how are you doing, social media manager. It's always when is McRib coming back." Or it's, "Are you feeling okay? You've barely touched the top of your cup." Because they were like, you poke the top, like you poke the little bubbles.
Okay.
Another one was, "Can I get it feels so human." And so you want it to feel human. It needs to feel like the person who's doing the copy and who is typing is seeing the same game that you are and is frustrated when you're frustrated and happy when you're happy. And it's a lot of hashtags and it's a lot of emojis and it just doesn't feel authentic.
Okay.
And so it needs to feel
authentic was always the word I was thinking of as well. It definitely, it's like buttoned up, as you said. Wears a tie.
Yeah.
It's a job. That's what it feels like. It's a job. It's not like you say, it's a fan where every day us three as fans of Virginia Tech football, we look at Virginia Tech football. Me and Brian, key play. We look at Tech sideline. We look at your Twitter account when you're saying something about it. We look at former players. And that's what you're right. And that is just such a great analogy to what our Twitter is. And I'm going to say what I said a couple seconds ago. This is a football Twitter. Football is not a nice, wear your tie, very cordial sport. It's pop. Yeah. It's hitting each other. It's blood. It's guts.
Let's also compare it to, I know we had talked about Mike Young earlier, but let's compare Hokies football Twitter account with the Hokies men's basketball Twitter account.
Mm-hmm.
And the type of engagement that they were getting this season and the type of tweets that they were sending out and how those were tracking with the fan base. And it's night and day. Mm-hmm. And I know who runs that account, and they're younger and they are passionate about the team.
Yeah. And it reads that way. I also love the fact that I love that there doesn't always have to be a graphic.
Nope.
Okay.
And you can be playful with emojis, you can be playful with GIFs, and you can I love that there is, it just feels like I can tell a fan is running the basketball account. It feels like they're watching the game with us.
Yep.
And I'm also a fan of, if you can do short copy, always do short. It's so much easier. Like it's the shorter it is, the more likely it is to come across as pithy and get to the point. The more copy there is, the more it feels didactic and serious. I'm like, I don't need it to be serious. Like, hype me up. Like, make it feel special. Let me know what you're doing. And then I like that both accounts are starting to share like third party content. But I think there's opportunities to do something really cool. Like, for example, I would love it if they brought back one of, like, find an older player, alumni who are really good on Twitter, who get it, have them do a takeover for the game.
Ooh.
Okay.
Have them run the account for the day. It'll give flavor. It'll feel very different. People who've never turned in before will turn in to say hi. I think there's just so many opportunities to be able to do that. The other thing that I think was a missed opportunity was there weren't a lot of players that were there weren't a lot of people who were able to watch the game last year. And there were a couple people who were able to go and did like a few minute lives. But what I think would have been really, really, really cool is because they asked for money, like, we'll take your money and you just like forgive your seat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What if you did a private, like, what if you did a video, you linked it, and you have a camera from one specific seat? It could be at the 50-yard line. And you just have someone recording live, and you get access to that feed. So you get to watch the game from that seat for the whole game instead of watching it on TV. You get to actually, it's as close as you're going to get to feeling like you're in the stadium. And you can pay extra for it, whatever you wanted to put for it. But you can call it like the 50-yard seat.
Yep.
And someone will be there and they'll move the camera as the plays are happening. But you'll get to be as close as you can to being at lane during all of that. I feel like that was a missed opportunity.
I love the metaphor about our Twitter wearing a tie.
Yeah.
One of my favorite metaphors from that episode. But let's pivot a little bit to how kind of COVID impacted some of the off the field stuff and some of the on the field stuff from the 2020 season. So Evan Watkins broke that down in our discussion with him back in February. So we'll let him take off on that again here.
Like I mentioned earlier, if you're outside that top 400 guys going into going into your senior year, with as many kids didn't get to play their senior year with 0 summer camps, I take a lot of that and throw it out the window. You know, if you're a 5-star, you're a 5-star. We all can see it. Yeah. But if you're a mid 3-star and a high 3-star, what's the difference? If you're a low 4-star, if you're an 87 and a 90, the difference between a 3-star and a 4-star, there's really not that much difference when you add in the fact that there was no camps, no spring workouts, and possibly no fall. So, I think Virginia Tech signed some good football players in this class. The rankings won't necessarily reflect it as well as I think it should. But I do think they did well adapting in this environment that was almost unable to be planned for.
Let's go ahead and piggyback straight off of that, because I feel like, you hit hard on not having a lot of senior tape for these guys, not having really any of the camps. What guys in this class do you think had the biggest potential for that kind of off-season bump or that senior season bump if we were operating business as usual?
I think in state, I look at a guy like a Jalen Stroman. I think Jalen Stroman's a very good football player, and I think he was really coming into his own as a junior. Obviously, he has some advantages being Greg's little brother and some of the guys he works out with and trains with. He's got really good size, range, and speed. I think he probably would have been in line for one. Jalen Jones, another 1,000-yard receiver out of Richmond, now didn't play the best competition in the world. But if you can put together back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving years, that's hard to deny. Guys like that. I think Kelly Lawson probably had the most upside. If Kelly Lawson could camp and had a senior year before signing day, I would not be shocked if he was a 4-star by some rankings. I mean, You look at what he's done. You look at his body, and you think he can play anything. Is he the next Tremaine? Is he the next Amari Barno? We don't really know right now. But you look at what he does in his workouts. You look at, I think he was clocked. Was he clocked at 20? Was he clocked at 26 on one of his training videos? It was unreal how fast he was moving on one of the treadmills that clocks. It was almost the equivalent of a Caleb Farley, and this guy's got a much different type of body. So
yes, he does.
I think he's a guy that would have probably gone up a little bit in the rankings. A guy like DJ Harvey. I think DJ Harvey probably would have played his way up if California was playing football in the fall. I think one guy I think that was held down, and I don't really know why, because he was super productive. But I think Kenji Christian is somebody that also was kind of a victim of rankings, where I feel like he's probably a 4-star talent. I think he's a really good running back. I think he maybe was overlooked a little bit because you're coming from the state of Alabama and you don't have an Auburn offer and you don't have an Alabama offer. LSU was maybe within hours of offering him before their restrictions hit. This is a guy that he's an SEC player, and he luckily for Virginia Tech, he didn't get those 3 SEC offers that would have been a game changer for him, and now he's headed to Blacksburg. I think he's a guy that a lot of people kind of overlook. I think Christian Moss is an interesting one. Everybody talked about Trey Curry. You remember Trey Curry was committed to Virginia Tech for a little while, 4-star. Yeah. Trey Curry actually transferred to North Cobb for his senior year. They played together, him and Christian Moss. Christian Moss is a better wide receiver. Christian Moss was the top guy at North Cobb, and he's a mid 3-star guy. He's got great size. He's got really good range, and he's just a guy that fell through the COVID cracks. So, I think when you look at it and you go through each of these players, every year I try to look at the commits, and I think who's a reach, who's a guy that I can look at right now and say, I don't think they're going to play at Virginia Tech. And when you look down their list right now, there's not a lot of those guys. There are some guys that you say, oh, it might take a year or 2, maybe 3, maybe they won't play until they're upperclassmen. But there's not a whole lot you look at and you say, I don't see it. I don't know what they're seeing in this guy. I don't see it at all. So, I think when you look at it that way, I think the Hokies, I think they did as well as I think that they probably could under the circumstances of everything going around them, COVID, and potentially the hot seat of Justin Fuente.
And, as much as COVID did it affected the fan base as well. Obviously, it affected the Hokie Club. And Christina Garnett goes into, it seemed like the only times we were getting things from Hokie Club was, right after a game, whether that be win or lose. So she sort of gives in what she envisions and hope Hokie Club can become. And, again, it's great takes from her.
It's the thing is, though, is that, and this is going to sound really bad for any marketers, but they'll agree with me. Get in the head of your customer and really think about the customer experience. You don't need a marketing class. You need to be able to think like the person you want to target. Really swim in that. Like you said, where are you going to be the most hyped, the most pro Hokies, the most loose with your wallet?
Just before the start of a game.
I'm
excited for even if I'm sitting at home, I'm excited for what I'm about to watch. I'm engaged with the program. Right. As optimistic as I'm going to be is just before that kickoff.
Yep.
Regardless of what happens, win or lose, the most optimistic I'm probably going to be about this game is just before kickoff.
Yep.
That's where I'm going to feel the best about the program.
What I would love to do is you could even do it as I know that nonprofits can do this. I don't know if they'd be able to do it, but having like a text campaign, like text hashtag Hokies to 54321, and you send $25.
That easy.
And I mean, as we're moving forward, this whole thing with donations, we're going to need a lot more money coming in, especially relative to what people in the ACC are doing, because we're already falling behind on that front, especially on the individual donation side of things. In terms of what we are putting funding wise into the program, we're about middle of the pack in terms of total money, and we're towards like the back third in terms of donations. We got to figure out something to get those in here, and I know winning helps, but in lieu of that, we're going to need to figure out another way to get more folks engaged in the program, both with putting asses in seats at game, but also putting money into into Hokie Club.
Well, here's the thing, Hokie Club. When you think about Hokie Club, what is like your first thought?
Drive for 25.
But you know what it should feel like? The Hokie Club should be ran like an ambassador program, not like an entry-level donation point. That's what the Hokie Club is. It's here is your entry to becoming a donor to Virginia Tech football. And that's not what it should be. It should be an ambassador program where everyone that gets to be a part of that is given tools that they can share their fanhood. Here's the latest graphic we're going to give you that you can share on social before anyone else. Here's a special banner that you can put for your Twitter and Facebook. Here's a keepsake that you can have. Here's a free ticket to bring someone who's never been to a Hokie game. Like, just it shouldn't feel like, now it feels like Hokie Club is the token answer for, do you support Virginia Tech football with your money? And people say, yes, I'm a Hokie Club member. That's okay. It shouldn't feel like it's tied to money. Hokie Club should never feel like it's tied to money. It should feel like that's your entry into becoming the person who gets to be on the field, the person who gets to help, the person who gets to weave themselves into the history of Virginia Tech. It should feel like that is how you enter the community. It should feel emotional. It shouldn't be tied to money. It should be tied to emotion. Like, what I would love to see, honestly, as soon as things are open and as soon as it's safe for us all to congregate, I would love for there to be a field day at Lane.
That would be cool. Yep, that'd be really cool.
Just be in that stadium again. You can have players. You can have past players. You can have the staff. But it literally is like the whole point is you go and you get to stand on the field and you get to meet some of your favorite players and you get to hang out and hug your friends that you would normally, you haven't seen in months, but used to tailgate with all the time. Just do like a $50 a ticket field day and you get to go and you get to hang out and you get to hug your Hokie friends.
And what I like about what she said there is that we're starting to see a little bit more of that come into play. As some of you know, we've been pushing some of the Hokie Club ambassador elements into our sign off here, where we're encouraging you to join the Hokie Club. Let's reach for excellence and achieve those goals. At the same time, let's get another take here from Evan Watkins on another issue that's going to, I think, rear its head here very soon, and we're already starting to see some of it, but it's the scholarship issue that resulted from the essentially 2020 being a free year for everyone. So he breaks down not just that what we're looking at starting this year, but that going into next year is going to be really when this issue starts to be a problem, because of those numbers and because of having to get back to 85.
Yeah, and here I'll throw a couple numbers out at you, because 24/7 Sports ran a really good article on this recently, that FBS college football teams signed more than 400 fewer recruits to scholarships in 2021 than they did for 2020 and 2019.
Holy cow.
So that is fairly eye-opening, I would say. Now, 2022 might be worse. And that's, that's where things can start to get a little scary. But we'll start with 2021. So when you're in 2021, when you're trying to recruit 2021 and COVID hits, if you were not one of the top, we'll estimate, we'll round to 400. If you are not one of the top 400 players in the country, your rankings may not matter kind of at all, to be honest, because the big ranking periods for you outside that top 400 would be junior film eval, spring workouts, summer camps, senior season. Now you look at players in the state of Virginia. They had their junior season. They had no spring football, no spring workouts at all. You have no summer camps at all. You have no senior season before signing day. 3 out of the 4 ranking opportunities you had are gone. Now, that also means 3 out of the 4 major scholarship opportunities you had are now gone as well. So you not only could be somebody that falls through the cracks, you are also somebody that, even if a school takes a chance on you, that school is taking a major risk by offering you a scholarship. If you haven't played football in a year, they haven't seen you. They haven't seen you on campus to see, are you really 6'4" or are you 6'1"? Are you really 220 pounds? Are you really 180 pounds? They can't get you at a camp to say you ran a 4.4 and we clocked you at a 4.9. So you're taking a major risk by offering those scholarships. Now, on top of that, what you have to balance out, and a lot of college coaches did balance this out, is, do we take that risk on a borderline recruit? We're not talking the 5-star. We're talking the mid 3-star guy that may or may not pan out. Or do we hit the transfer portal? Because the transfer portal has, a lot of talent in it, of guys who have verified heights and weights, have verified game film for most of them, or at least college practice film. And these are guys that won't tie up a scholarship for 5 years if they don't pan out. These are guys that you could tie up a scholarship for 1, 2, 3 years. And then when all of this maybe starts to normalize, then you go back and you backfill that position. You recruit that number. So, when you look at it throughout that way, if you are not a top of the board guy for most schools, you ran the risk of not having an opportunity to play at the level you wanted to play at. You may have to drop down a level, or you maybe didn't get a chance to sign with anybody yet, because even when you think of dropping down a level, some of those schools, Texas State is a great example. I know they're not regional to us, but they're a great example that they looked at this year and said, they kind of just said, screw it.
Zero.
We can't. We took zero. They took 0 high school kids and only recruited the transfer portal. But you know what that does also for them, that some people may not even think of when they hear that, they think that's ridiculous. But what they did is they just postponed a year, because what we're looking at now, looking at that with 2021, COVID aside, let's say COVID ends today and life goes back to normal and the dead period ends and everything cool, everything's good. The NCAA extended scholarship limits for the 2021 season for players to hold over. Seniors can get a chance to play again, down to freshmen getting their freshman year back. Okay, that's great. So we extend that out. Theoretically, you could have 25 scholarship seniors. Most people don't. You theoretically could.
Yeah.
That gives you 110 scholarships theoretically for this year. But after this year, you have to be at 85 scholarships starting next year. How do you get there? I talked to one of our I talked to one of our guys in the industry today, one of our national guys with 24/7 Sports, and I told him, I said, I think it's crazy. The NCAA needs to do something. In my opinion, they need to extend it, not as far, but extend it a little bit. And I was like, Virginia Tech, for example, I ran an article 2 weeks ago. Virginia Tech has roughly 8 scholarships open right now for 2022. Now, that will obviously expand. We all know that 8 is going to grow 15, 17, maybe even up to 20 with attrition and transfer portal and things like that. But just for today, about 8. And he said, there are teams out there right now that are negative. There are teams out there right now that have to lose players on scholarship today to sign anyone in 2022. So, when we look at this and we say, oh, they signed 400 less people this year in 2021 due to COVID, and that's terrible. I could see it exponentially larger in 2022 because college programs don't have the space.
Yeah.
So one of two things will have to happen. You are going to have to see massive attrition, and nobody likes to talk about attrition. Attrition isn't always bad. Players entering the portal is not always bad. I think, Virginia Tech fans in particular, especially what has happened over the last few years and some of the guys leaving, think people leaving the transfer portal is a major problem. But you have to look at it multiple ways. Some people leave the transfer portal because they're unhappy. Some people leave the transfer portal because they want more playing time or a better opportunity. Some people leave the transfer portal or leave by the transfer portal just simply because of academics or an off the field issue. Some people will leave to be closer to home. Some people, the side nobody really wants to talk about, are asked to leave. People act like that doesn't happen. That happens. People are asked to leave. Your scholarship may not be retained. If it is retained, you may not see the field. You may not play. It may be worth it for you to find an opportunity elsewhere. And a lot of that happens everywhere. Now you're going to add in on top of that, moving forward, the scholarship number crunch that every school is dealing with. We have to free up space somehow.
Yeah.
You're going to deal with the money of it. I heard, every 10 scholarships is roughly $1 million. So, if you're carrying over a lot of scholarships, you're carrying over a lot of money. So some schools are saying, hey, we know the NCAA said you can carry over and go over 85 this year, but we can't afford it. So we're not doing it. So, some of those players may have to find other homes. And then we're going to add the colossal mess that I foresee coming of players entering the transfer portal because we were a 2021 signee. We never saw the coaches face to face. We never stepped foot on campus before we signed, and we hate it here. We're in a bad situation. We're going to see that become very apparent, and I think it'll be very apparent very quickly. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of freshmen all over the country start to enter the portal after getting on campus and being there for a few months and realizing, maybe what I was sold in recruiting isn't reality. Maybe, I thought I was coming into this, great opportunity. I thought maybe I was going to be a guy that had a shot at early playing time to find out that I'm 4th team on the depth chart when I get here. Maybe I'm a guy who never realized how small this campus is or how big this campus is or how far away from home it is. What do I do? And I have to live on campus for a year and they tell me I can't have a car, and how do I do it? It's typical college, things that you have to learn and adjust when you get there. And I think we're going to see that fairly quickly because unjustly, the NCAA kind of forced the hand of recruits to sign sight unseen for the majority of them. And I think a lot of colleges took advantage of that and said, hey, if you don't sign with us or you don't commit to us now, you're not going to have a spot. Nobody else, other schools may not take you. Lock in your spot now. And they may not be in love with the choice that they made.
All right. Lastly, folks, got to end with a lot of fun and discussing the rivalries that we have with not only Virginia, Miami, but also West Virginia, which is obviously big this year because it's going to be the first time we played in Morgantown in close to 20 years. The White getting into this, you just heard the passion. And knowing the importance, and as much as people want to knock, Miami's always going to be a national brand, like he says. We do need UVA to be better. And it's my opinion. If they get a little better, it's going to help out everything. But here's the White's take on that from back in March.
Let me ask this, and I want to kind of phrase this the right way because when we were coming up, Miami and UVA, the rivalry games, when those games were played, it was a big deal. It was. I mean, from when you got there in 94 to roughly probably 06, 07, those games were wars. And me and Brian have been talking, like, do you feel that whether Miami or UVA or maybe a semblance of both, like if those rivalry games get back to where they were 20 years ago, where like you mentioned the Miami game when it's a night game, both teams are in the top 10, or the Commonwealth Cup game when, you know, like 95 when that happened, when, you know, both teams have 10 wins and both teams are trying to get to the Sugar Bowl and both teams are ranked in the top 15. What do you think is more important that helps elevate Tech's program? Is it both, or do you have a preference?
Well, let me just add this real quick. You forgot to mention West Virginia because West Virginia was also relevant in that, and you can make an argument. You can make the argument that West Virginia Tech rivalry during the 90s and the early 2000s before Tech jumped to the ACC in 04 were probably better games and more important than the Virginia Tech UVA rivalry. But during my era, to your point, the UVA Virginia Tech rivalry was epic. And the Miami rivalry with Tech for years was epic. It was bloodshed. It was, you know, Braveheart near the end of the movie. It was real. It's my preference. I would like, this is going to make some people mad. I like it when Tech and UVA are both good because I grew up in that. And it's good great for the Commonwealth. People look at me funny on Twitter when I celebrate UVA. Not that they are celebrating wins, but I'm like, hey, that's a good win. That's good for us. I mean, it's just better. Jonathan McLaughlin was like, hey, everybody, post your Commonwealth, drinking out the cup. And I said, I lost my last 2 years to UVA, and he couldn't even fathom that. And I said, hey, man, they were really good. Y'all beat some UVA teams that couldn't beat Centerville High School on the road, okay? So, calm down with joking me, because my UVA battles, we were going against, Dingle and Patrick Kearney and Wally Rayner and the Ferrier brothers and, some studs, Aaron Brooks. UVA was ranked 15th. We ranked 18th or vice versa. It wasn't what you see now. So if you have both programs, Beamer said it best and George Wells co-signed it, there's enough talent in the state for both teams to get it and win, but both teams are not getting it, especially, to be fair, UVA. UVA is the one that's fallen short the last 16, 17 years, not Tech. And Grove, and I know Tech fans are going to smirk when I say this, I think Grove got too out-of-state happy during his day. He got Coach of the Year, and he just kept going up to New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, because he was a New York Jet coach. He didn't really look highly upon Virginia talent. Mm-hmm. And I think that came back to bite him because Tech was full of Commonwealth guys.
Yep.
So I think you got to get guys in state. I think Miami and Tech will always have that rivalry because of what we did during my era. And it's funny, too, because Miami has a lot of coaching carousel within their program, and nobody lives off mystique and manufacture hype and history lessons more than the Hurricanes of Miami. Between Michael Irvin and Warren Sapp, we get more history lessons about the U, but less productivity on the field. So it doesn't match up. It's more so, let me look at this 30 for 30 so I can get what you're talking about, because you guys are the king of underachieving. So the reality is that Miami is constantly going to be a rivalry with Tech because they're two Big East foes, and they gave you great. I mean, if you still have the ESPN Classic channel, to this day, I get, hey, you're on, or even ESPNU. They always show tons of Miami rivalry games from the
Yeah,
'90s, and
ACC.
even yeah, they do.
ACC Network was showing those '90s games back like in the summer last year.
Yeah,
and obviously there.
yeah, but the UVA one, you need UVA to get better or like to push Tech, but at the same time, it's a fine line. You don't want them to become better because then it can hurt you. So it's kind of like how UVA helped us get into the ACC. You know, you kind of want both programs there. So I'm a Virginian. You know, I love the Richmond area. I love Southwest Virginia. I love Northern Virginia. And I love, obviously, my home, 757. And I like, you know, I mean, look, you guys we follow each other on Twitter. At the end of the day, look how great the UVA Virginia Tech basketball rivalry is right now, and how it's been the last 5 years with Buzz and Bennett, and now Young and Bennett, who love and respect each other. And look what they're doing for both programs. And it's great basketball. And damn right it looks good seeing UVA and Tech atop of the ACC. I like that. I want what Carolina and Duke have. I'm tired of it. Why can't we have that for the Coastal? You know, I mean, why you can't be afraid of competition? You know, I mean, it's cool to brag about the streak and look at the little memes and Mike London crying with the Jordan face and okay, yeah, it's funny. But are you really bragging? You know, when you have a midfield altercation between 2 5 and 6 teams, and Michael Brewer has to lead a comeback to Bucky Hodges. I was in the stadium. It was a great win. But then I left after the smoke clears and you're happy you beat your rival for the whatever 10th time. You're 6-6.
Yep.
And you're 5-7. So what are you really happy about? It's embarrassing. It's not something you should brag about because everyone outside of Virginia doesn't give a damn. You know? And that's what people need to remind themselves of. You want to be part of something bigger than just the conference game. You know what I'm saying? I don't have Alabama, Clemson, or Alabama, Auburn fatigue. I have fatigue when it comes to being irrelevant. Like, you know, when you wake up after a great win on Sunday morning and you're eating your breakfast and you getting your fantasy lineups ready, and you're like, okay, let me turn and see these highlights. What they're gonna say about this Tech UVA game on college, game night. They just show the score.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Yep.
Nobody cares.
They played the game. Here's the final score.
Yeah, they were like, and in other news, Virginia Tech holds on and beat UVA. They'll go to the bowl game that comes on Comcast on December 19th at 5. You know, I mean, that's what happens. You know, I'm not mocking my program. I just think sometimes we need a reality check of what we once have and what we need to get back to and beyond. And, to answer your question again, I just think if it's my choice, it's Virginia Tech, UVA. Although, say what you want, but when you consistently beat Miami like we've done it before, the brand of Miami is still relevant. When you beat Miami, it still turns heads.
Yep.
You know, like we did last year? Oh yeah, when we after that Duke debacle and Hendon came on my Miami game and they beat them. You know, or that year when Ja'Cory Harris and Kurt Herbstreit declared the U is back, and Tyrod and Jared Boykins beat them 31-7. You know, in the rain game.
Smackdown in the rain and lane. I remember that game fondly. But to your point, and Brian's got a question, but I'm going to make it to your point, though. The Miami game, we had just gotten curb stomped by Duke. That was still the 3:30 ABC game that year. We were 2-2, just lost by 40 to a bad Duke team. But that game was a national game. And I think you're right, and I'm with you. You want UVA Tech to be good. Brian, I think you agree, right?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think when UVA is good, the programs push each other. I think that's what kind of came out when you were building the program at Virginia Tech in the 90s, and I feel like that is kind of what helped propel Virginia Tech to what it became and what it was throughout the 2000s. And I feel like UVA being down and then some of the other things that have changed on the national recruiting front, we just we're not where we were, and I feel like getting some of that back, getting some of that competing for the same, top 10 players in the state every year, getting that back would be good.
You know what I sold Mike Vick on coming to Tech? I said, imagine if you go to Tech and Ronald Curry goes to UVA and the rivalry you guys had in high school continues.
Oh.
And he loved that notion. Of course, we all know Ronald went to UNC because of their basketball and football program.
Yep.
Later, Mac Brown and Dean Smith left. But you know what, also to your point, UVA ultimately, indirectly, because of their inconsistency with Grove in London and the streak and them started losing to Duke, when Duke was still inferior before, they really got, pretty good program. It resulted in Virginia Tech becoming complacent because your in-state rivalry is almost a guaranteed win, and you're still losing recruits, but you're losing to Ohio State, but you're still getting David Wilson, Logan Thomas, and Tyrod Taylor, so you're okay. And then, it didn't really push you. It didn't, because again, Beamer had to get guys like myself and Ken Oxendon and Tony Morris and all those guys to come in because UVA had George Welsh. And it wasn't like UVA was winning 11 games. They only had one 10-win season in the history of their program. But at the end of the day, they were winning in the ACC, and they held it over Virginia Tech's head because the Big East was always looked upon as a very good conference, but it wasn't an ACC with their tradition and their pageantry. So they had to leg up. So Virginia Tech had to work twice as hard to become relevant and be respected.
That is going to wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast, and I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Visit our website at boundarycornerbt.com to listen to all our episodes. While you're there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, or your favorite podcast source, Spotify, Amazon, Apple. Brian's made sure they are everywhere. If you're looking to join the Hokie Club and help achieve the Reach for Excellence goal, please visit boundarycornerbt.com/giving to get started. As always, we let our buddy Jason Long play us out. Catch him on Spotify and Apple Music. We thank you for listening. And as always, let's go.
Hokies!